Hey guys, it's me, EODGamer here, and today we're back with another Team Comp video, and we have here Yukong, a new character that's released in 1.1, who is an imaginary harmony character as well. She's the only imaginary character that's 4-star and probably is accessible to a lot of us if we don't have Welt and Lorta. Now she has 3 things going for her, and I think it's very important to know a TLDR of a kit before diving into a team comps so we can understand it a little bit better. The first thing about her kit is she offers a lot of break damage on her own, single target break damage, unlike some other harmony characters like maybe Tingyun and Bronya who don't offer that much. That makes her very adept as maybe a single imaginary character in the team just to bring on to like break certain weaknesses. The second thing about her is she has imaginary type buffing in her kit. Not only is she an imaginary character, meaning she can run like Planetary Rendezvous to buff imaginary type damage on the same element team, she also has in her major traces some elemental type buffing for imaginary characters, making her probably the best in slot imaginary buffer type character for imaginary teams. And the third thing, which is probably like the most important and most confusing of her whole kit, in my opinion makes her like a very high skilled harmony character to play, is her Roaring Bowstring passive that has uptimes based on like the number of turns your teammates take. So Roaring Bowstring gives like damage buffs to your entire team, and when your teammate takes a turn, it eats up a particular stack, and every time they go again, they eat up another stack. What this means, it generally favors characters who don't really act very often in the turn order, or perhaps they have a lot of like follow-up abilities. For example, Clara's counter ability, you have Jingyuan's Lightning Lord, or even Zila's follow-up Resurgence passive after she defeats a target as well. All these will benefit quite well from Yukong's kit to just have greater uptime on that Roaring Bowstring passive. I think that she's a very high skill character to play because you have to start learning about speed tuning on characters. What speed tuning is basically adjusting your gear so that they take just nice enough turns to get the buffs that is required, meaning that you don't want characters that are not meant to take the buff to go first. For example, like your healer characters, maybe like Natasha, you wouldn't want her to go too fast as well because she takes up a lot of stacks. I think the most important thing to know about her is not only does she benefit follow-up attacks, she also benefits ultimate abilities. So characters that like to spam their burst likely will benefit quite a lot because ultimate abilities, for those of you who don't know, don't consider as like turn orders and don't eat up the stacks but still get the buff associated with it. For those of you who are like regular viewers of the channel, I'm going to do it slightly different in this video. I'm going to talk about like the more popular teams first and probably the better teams, and then go into more free-to-play teams all the way at the end of the video. I guess because we are a bit more mature in our game state, some of us already have like multiple 5-star characters as well. The first team I want to talk about, I think is going to be like the most interesting for her, will be a character or team comp for full imaginary team, and that's like primarily the thing that I want to try. In future, of course, we will have another character here in the hunt or destruction slot here. But for now, I think Welt offers good amounts of AoE damage, nihility, so about a lot of debuffing in its kit. You have Lorta for sustain. Yukong here does harmony buffing as well as good amounts of single target break damage for the team as well. I think this team is going to be really strong. We just need one more hunt DPS character and it's probably good to go. Not cheap as well because it's like 2 5-star imaginary characters, probably maybe 3 5-star imaginary characters. But we'll see how that goes. Let me just move them aside and let's talk about the next team real quick. And the second team I want to talk about is actually a Clara team. Even though her ultimate ability doesn't do damage directly, a lot of her kit comes from follow-up abilities when enemies are attacking. This means that against floors with very fast enemies who are hitting very often, you will actually get a lot more value from Yukong's uptime, and that's like some way to think about it. If the enemies move a lot faster, Clara gets a lot more value, and also you get a lot more value from Yukong. So if you do face like floors with fast moving enemies, this is probably like the best way to utilize that fast moving enemies speed as well, if maybe you're not running a speed down character like Welt or Dan Heng. What Yukong does offer is she is able to open the team, the third slot, to a hyper carry character, for example like Tingyun, which means you're playing a double harmony into a main DPS kind of character, because Yukong also offers a lot of damage on her own, which means that she's not going to just be a dead slot contributing no amounts of damage. She does do a little bit of damage on her own. Other than that, you could of course run a traditional hyper carry with Jingyuan. Jingyuan also works very well with Yukong because of his Lightning Lord passive. Some of you might be wondering, like, maybe he doesn't have enough, he won't get his lightning lock specifically on time all the time to get her burst. But one thing to know is that if you have a bit of speed tuning in her kit and you start to arrange his speed accordingly depending on what is needed, you will likely feel that it becomes much more manageable. A lot of us, when we first start out and play these teams with Yukong, you will feel it's very difficult to manage, and that's why I say like she's a relatively high skill character, because you need to start speed tuning your roster in order to get the full value of a kit, which is I think Hoyover's first introduction of a little bit more higher skill character when it comes to stat management. And it's only better when we have a bit more gear, which in 1.1 is a pretty nice time to add into the game as well. You could in this case run, of course, support, for example like Bronya, to run a hyper carry team for Jingyuan. Bronya works very well because she has 100% action advance, meaning that if for some reason you have maybe one more stack LF and you want your DPS to take that stack no matter what, you can always use Bronya, push your Jingyuan all the way up, take that stack of damage, and maybe later on reset and start to refresh those charges as well. I know I'm like not moving the 4th slot here, but basically I think most of you are familiar with it right now. You can pretty much run most defensive units together with her, especially if they are generally slower moving characters, act outside of their turn order, or really have high burst costs. The last thing you want is defensive units to take up a lot of her turn order. That's like the worst case scenario. A character that I think worked really well from like defensive slot will be March 7, since March 7 also has counter in the kit, which logic works very similarly to Clara Jingyuan as well, because if she follow attack she doesn't eat the buff, she has some shielding. And the next character I want to talk about is Zealer. I think Zealer is a hit or miss, and the reason why I say that is on paper she does benefit quite a bit. When she kills a target, she goes again from her Resurgence passive. Resurgence, then that follow-up ability is not considered a turn, which means that you actually have quite good uptimes if you're killing a lot of targets. Her ultimate burst cost is also, she has quite good uptime, especially if she defeats target, so definitely does benefit from Yukong's 2-turn order, even though she's a fast moving character quite a bit. But the caveat of course is there has to be squishy enemies on the side for her to take advantage of. If she doesn't have like squishy targets and maybe it's just one big monster or many big monsters, you likely will find value in other DPS characters available, maybe like for example Bronya or Tingyun. But if you don't have Bronya or Tingyun, I think that Yukong definitely will be a solid option, maybe slightly better than Asta because of the amount of damage buffing that she provides on her own as well. So those are like some things you can consider. I think that Zealer's speed generally is not very favorable for Yukong, but of course if your squish targets that I mentioned, will definitely find good value. Other than that, a character that I want to talk about is upcoming in future will be a character like Kafka. I think Kafka is a tricky one to put, because if you are running her for DOT, you won't really care too much about the crit rate, crit damage buffs that Yukong provides. If you are running her mainly for a traditional crit Kafka lightning DPS build, where you focus mainly on like speed, crit and crit damage, I think she will see a lot of value from Yukong. She also has a follow-up attack in her kit, so it's depending whether you're running DOT teams or whether you're running a more traditional crit teams. Yukong really plays into a more traditional crit team rather than a DOT team with, for example, like Kafka with Sampo, with Himiko, with Hook, and etc. etc. So that's like something to consider. So another character I want to talk about that is relatively neutral will be a character like Blade. I think Blade is pretty neutral, doesn't really care too much about the buffs, for example, that she provides. But one thing to note is that he benefits a lot from crit rate, crit damage buffs, more so than attack buffs from some of the other characters in the game, because he scales off also with HP, which means that attack buffing means you won't get that full scaling bonus. Crit rate, crit damage is the way to go if you want to build him for a very strong DPS. Of course, in that case, if you have Bronya, he might be better off with Bronya as well. And if you have Lota here in the same team, this will work pretty nicely as like a Yukong, Blade, Lota, and maybe one more DPS if you're thinking of. You really can run most people at this point because of a destruction character's versatility as well. Now we come to the 4-star characters here. I think 4-star characters that could see quite a bit benefit would be characters that act outside of their turn order, like Herta, who are generally relatively slow on their own, likes to build more for attack, does a lot of follow-up abilities, or characters that generally are slower in general, have higher multipliers, for example like Hook and Ireland, or even a physical main MC. And the reason why I say like slower characters and higher multipliers work better is if you think about her overall kit, Characters that move very fast and do less multiplier per instance, like hunt characters in general, unless they're using their ultimate ability and burst. Generally, if you're taking turns in their order, you want characters to be able to utilize those turns much better. Destruction characters generally have a higher multiplier, so they do more with their turn order and would favor a character's buffing kit like Yukong a little bit more. Of course, these destruction characters are not easy to play. They are a bit more higher skilled relatively compared to other Unga characters that we have in the game from Hunt and Erudition as well. So those are like some things I'm considering and what I'm focusing on as well. A character, for example, Susang Danheng, will require a bit more hyper carry style coming from the Hunt character, and also you have to be really good with fine-tuning your numbers in terms of your speed tune as well. And like and subscribe for more of such future videos. We do this every single patch for every single new character that's launching. Thank you so much for watching. See you in the next video.